Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar that we're doing today on leadership, leading agents of change. I'm going to be presenting today. My name's Alistair, and I've got several colleagues here from Instep, of which one of whom is Kartik. Hi, how you doing, Kartik?
I'm very well, Alistair. Good to see you. Good to see everybody on the call. Thank you for taking time out to attend this webinar.
Absolutely. It's always nice to do something like a webinar on a Friday lunchtime.
I think
Kind of
so.
got the weekend coming ahead. Hopefully the weather will be okay this weekend, and we'll be able to get out and enjoy ourselves. But yeah, without getting drenched or whatever. But it's yeah, summer's definitely ended, hasn't it? It's certainly felt like that the last couple of weeks.
Well, the sun is shining today. Let's hope it shines tomorrow. It's my daughter's 10th birthday party tomorrow, and we're having it in
Oh,
the
is it?
garden. We're having
Oh,
a karaoke
fantastic.
session in the garden.
Uh,
So I'm hoping the weather holds out.
Great, great. Well, I hope you live in a different part of the country to me. I live in Manchester, and we've got rain forecast
Yeah.
tomorrow morning. But yeah, whereabouts you based,
I'm,
Kartik?
I'm in Northwest London.
Great, great. Yeah, I think you've got a good forecast. So yeah, you should do great.
Fingers crossed.
Excellent, excellent. Well, welcome everyone. We're just giving everyone just a little bit of a chance, just to make sure that everyone's online and everyone's good to go. But I think maybe in just sort of 30 seconds or so, we'll just give people just a little bit more just to make sure they've downloaded. I know sometimes Zoom does this thing where you switch it on and then all of a sudden it downloads a brand new update. So that can be sort of a bit frustrating. If you've not used it for a little while, it'll kind of push that at people. So you don't really have a choice. So we'll just give them just a minute or so just to make sure that everyone's online who's registered. We've got a lot of people registered today. So really looking forward to this webinar. So today we're particularly going to be looking at the way that change is so important when it comes to the way we work with people. So there's all sorts of change models out there. There's all sorts of change processes and things about change. But actually, if we get the way that we deal with our people right, then actually I think change can be really so much more effective and land so much better. So that's kind of the key thing that we're looking at today, that people first approach when it comes to change. So yeah, Kartik, I think you've got a couple of things just to talk about.
Yeah,
Let me.
yeah.
Sorry, just
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, we're at 110 people. I think by the time we get intros out of the way, we should have the vast majority of people that have
yeah,
registered that are going to be on the session. So yeah, I guess
great,
we can get started. So,
great.
good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Leading Agents of Change webinar. We've got a great session planned for you. Before we get going, I'd like to introduce myself and Alistair. So my name is Kartik. I'm a client director. I'm part of the commercial team. I will be co-hosting with my colleague, Dr. Alistair Jones. Alistair is not the kind of doctor that writes prescriptions. He's
No,
the kind of doctor who wrote a dissertation on photodissociation dynamics of cluster ions as part of his DPhil for chemical physics. Alistair, I thought I'd mention that because it makes you sound super brainy.
it's a great conversation stopper when someone
Yeah,
asks
I
me,
can
"What? So what
imagine.
did you do?" Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can imagine. Alice has been part of the Instead team since 2017. During this time, he's been delivering leadership development programs to team leaders, operational managers, and senior leadership teams at companies ranging from the large household names to medium-sized kind of enterprises. And Alistair doesn't just talk the talk, he has walked the walk. Prior to joining Instep, he was a CEO at a national charity for over 5 years. Now, for the webinar, over the next 45 minutes or so, we will explore how to shift from managing change to leading it with a people first approach. As we all know, especially over the last 5 years, change is no longer a one off event, it's the constant state of business. Yet many people still treat it as a side project rather than a core capability. And as we've all seen, how companies that have failed to adapt, like Kodak, like the blockbusters of the world, who quickly lost ground to those companies that embraced transformation. The lesson here is clear. It's not technology alone that drives success, it's to do with the people who have the skills to lead the change. And that's why today's session, we will focus on a people first approach to change. So, Alistair will talk us through the journey of change, the models that support it, and the behaviors that make change sustainable. So, whether you're dealing with AI adoption, cultural shifts, or structural transformation, this session will be highly relevant for you. Now, we would like this session to be interactive. So Alistair will be launching a couple of polls during the session. He'll be asking you questions. So please actively post comments, put your answers in the chat. We will have several people monitoring the chat function. You can raise your virtual hand and one of the Zoom administrators will unmute you. Or if you prefer to wait until the end, we will have time at the end for a Q&A session. So with that, I'll hand over to Alistair, who will take us deeper into the why and how of business change.
Excellent. Thanks ever so much, Kartik. So I'm just going to change the way that I'm sharing the screen, and I'm going to pop up magically in the corner of your screens. So yeah, you can see me as well as seeing the slides. So hopefully that feels a little bit more naturally. So what I'd like you to do, if you just put your hands in front of you at the moment, and if you see that in the picture there, the woman is just holding her hands together, and when you put your hands together there, just have a look and observe which thumb is on the top. Now, for me, it's my right thumb. I don't know. There might be some of you strange people who it's the left thumb on the top. Don't worry, I'm not going to create some kind of divide where we've got the right thumb versus the left thumb people. But actually, what I want you to do is just take your hands apart and now put your hands back together, but the other way round. So it's your opposite thumb on the top. And now take them apart and do that again, and do it 3 or 4 more times. So you're kind of just trying that. How does it feel? Feels for me, it feels really odd. It feels a bit weird. It's like wearing a pair of wet socks or something that just it's just wrong. Yeah. But as we do it, the more we do it, it becomes a little bit easier to do it. We can do it a bit quicker. And before we know it, we've actually reprogrammed our brains just slightly in order to be able to adopt to that change and be able to take that on board slightly differently. And that's what you've been doing there. So I apologize if I've been doing a bit of science on you and a bit of, as Kartik said, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm merely a doctor that just used to fire lasers into vacuums and watch things fly apart. But actually doing that change feels like that. Change does feel strange, and it does get it can take a while to get used to. But as we kind of build those new connections, as we build those new neural pathways in the brain, and as we begin to think about how we can do change differently, it we can become accustomed to the benefits of that change and doing something different. I mean, purely, I'm not suggesting that you now need to hold your hands in a different way or anything, but it's just an example of just how change can feel strange. And actually, it's really important to remember when we're leading any business through change and any organization through change, it's really important that we remember that that's what's going on for all the people that work there. Let's have a quick look at an example of a business. Blockbuster Video, as Kartik's already mentioned, one of the founders of Netflix was called Randolph, and he vividly remembers how Blockbuster executives just laughed him out the room when they made a proposal for them to buy Netflix for £50 million at the time. I don't know if you remember, Netflix used to actually post out DVDs in the post, and very different now to what's happened within the world now. Netflix and now that new disruptor, and it says here, businesses are unwilling to disrupt themselves. There'll always be someone else willing to disrupt them. So here we've got Netflix, that kind of disruptor, and now Netflix have recently been described by Richard Osman. You might be aware, he writes those books, Thursday Murder Club. He's also a TV producer, been behind a lot of virtual reality and obviously presenter on things like Pointless and Richard Osman's House of Games. He now calls Netflix the first global network. So you've got BBC, or in America, you've got places like ABC or CNN or all of that. But now Netflix was that network that is across the entire globe. And we're in this world now where a volatile world is the normal, where things are uncertain, where there are lots of complexities, and also we have an ambiguous future. There's so much, and we call this this VUCA world, where it's changed. So much so that change is the norm. We can almost set our watches by it. We know that change is going to happen. Many of us have actually almost, I've got a PhD, but actually you probably all qualified in a PhD just through doing COVID. Those 5 years ago, back in 2020, we would have just come out of lockdown and be actually just about to go into a second lockdown as autumn approached. But actually, as we come used to the world and see what's happening, then we can see how we can understand how do we lead people through change rather than just managing around the edges of it, but actually leading people and leading them well. Because leaders lead people, whereas managing is about managing processes, systems, and tasks. Now we need both. We need those systems and tasks and processes, but actually, if it's not for people, then those things don't happen, unless, of course, you're using some kind of AI, which is another form of a disruptor. So let's come back to thinking about change. And there was one thing that happened back at the start of the Roman Empire. It said, I don't know if you're aware of this, but research says apparently the average UK male thinks about the Roman Empire at least once a day. I didn't know this. Someone told me that. I thought that's complete nonsense. Well, you just have today if you're a male, but you also have if you're female today, or whatever gender you are. So change is the norm. However, what we're thinking about here is those many decisions and moments in leadership. And here Julius Caesar had this decision. Do I cross the Rubicon? He had to cross this river. When he crossed the river into Italy, he is heard to have declared this phrase, "The die is cast." You might have heard it as well as a statement, and it was a step that marked an irreversible shift in the Roman Empire, and it kind of ushered in the Roman Empire. And we see that phrase echoing around in society now and in culture. It means that point of no return. Today in our organizations, we're constantly crossing those Rubicons, those points of no return, those Rubicons for ourselves. So the question that we're kind of going to ask you when we're thinking about that die is cast for you, and this is our first poll for you to take part in and to interact with, is what are those which are the five most common types of business change in the UK have you experienced in the last 5 years? So we've got a poll. We're looking at these five different types of change: structural, technological, cultural, operational, and strategic. You can tick one of them, you can tick all of them. Up to you. So you tick as many as apply. But which one? No, actually, I think it says a single choice. So which one is the one that has most affected you? Which is the one that has most affected you when it comes to crossing the Rubicon? Of all of these business types of change, just as a sort of because what we do, we're gonna share that information, and we'll see we'll get a sort of bit of feedback as to when it comes to that change that we're experiencing. What are some of the main forms of change that we're experiencing? We'll just give a little bit more. Thanks, Ashita. And then when you feel that the majority of people have voted, then if you want to share those results, Ashita, that would be fantastic.
Sure.
You ready? Yep. Great. Excellent. So what have we got? So okay. So of everyone who's on the webinar, we've got a strong leaning. Well, there's three key ones that are really standing out, aren't there? There's that structural, which is the top one. Some technological, so obviously AI having a huge impact. We're moving now to that third generation of AI, known as generative AI. This isn't a workshop on AI, but obviously that's a key thing. And then cultural, yes. So the change in people, behavior, values. Operational, a lot less actually, but then strategic, again, not to be ignored either. So we have these different types of change that are all happening. Thank you very much, everyone, for indicating that. So, so the question is, how do you feel about the change? How do people feel about the change when change happens? We've identified that there are these five main types of structural change. During change, people often ask these three questions. They first of all say, "Do I still believe it? You know, things are changing. Is this the right place for me? Is there some kind of cultural fit?" Thank you. Is my work still valued? Actually, if we're going to be doing something different, it sounds like I'm not going to be needed here, but actually, it's going to be changing in a different way as well. And then lastly, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my team? What does this mean for my future? And often when this is happening, then all sorts of things are going on in people's minds. And it's really important to remember when we're communicating to people, they may not be listening. Because actually, although the change is happening and we might have done everything we can to communicate it, people are asking these questions because they want to know the real answer. That those are important things to them. So let's have a think about your Facebook and Instagram feeds over the last 3 weeks, maybe. I imagine you've had a lot of children standing in their school uniform on the doorstep of schools as they've been going back to school and everything. And if they were not in their school uniform, if they were a little bit like this fella here, Will Ferrell in the film Elf, it would look really odd if it was me in a school uniform going to a primary school. In fact, positively awkward. Yeah. Same with my son. My son's 25 now. I remember him moving from primary school to secondary school. He's now working and driving and everything like that. If he was still in that primary school that I was the governor of just up the road here in Manchester, it would be very odd. The natural thing about change is that people progress. That's a positive thing, and it's a human thing as well. Change is that norm. It's natural in human development, and the right thing is that people move from one area where they are, move forward and grow and develop. And move through to whatever it is that they end up doing. It might be university, it might be college, it might be something else, it might be straight into work. But however they develop, and obviously something like that. That's where the comedy comes from in this film. If you may like it, you may not have seen it. But yeah, for me, that it kind of is an example of what it would be like, or what the world would be like if adults were still in school, and if change weren't happening, because it's a totally natural thing. The challenge is we do have to take some time to adapt to change, and change requires a transition. And if we don't make sure that we focus on people as they navigate that transition, then we run the risk of that change not landing well. So what we're going to be doing is thinking about this people first change. And when we're thinking about people first change, what we're trying to think about is, and this is certainly a mood that's so important these days, is there's a growing emphasis now on understanding how that human side of change, including the individual motivations, how people might be resisting the change, but also how they need support in getting through change is important. So what we want to do is we want to focus on sustainability of this change. So we're recognizing that change needs to be embedded within an organization. It needs to be embedded within the culture of the organization in order for it to be sustainable. And that also then prevents people reverting back to the old habits and how things used to be as well. And it's about helping people to become agents of change rather than just recipients of that change themselves. So the next thing is about how we focus on communication and collaboration. So when change happens, it creates a vacuum. And into that vacuum, people put all of their anxieties and fears and concerns. And it's almost impossible to over communicate during a change process because people will have so many questions. And you remember, as I just said, often people, when change is happening, they're asking all of these other questions. They're not really receiving information, or they're not even listening sometimes as to what's going on and what they're thinking about. So that emphasis on communication and collaboration is really key. So it's really important that we recognize how important to be clear in communication, to not just do it once, but to do it multiple times, and also to use different channels of communication so we can reach everyone we need to. And also having that personal touch, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And then that helps to build approach so that people will buy in to that change. And then it's the buying into the change that will help to ensure that we get the successful implementation of changes as well. And then lastly, it's around how we mitigate and navigate against some of that resistance. Often people will resist because of just a lack of understanding of why the change is happening. And there's a number of different reasons why that might be. And we're going to look at a few tools and just a few sort of pointers that help us go through a change process and make sure that we've covered off these aspects that psychologically will hopefully help to set people up to thrive through change rather than to struggle through change and feel the need to resist that change, or to create some kind of issue around that change. So let's have a quick look at this next thing. So because when we have change, I don't know how you feel about change. Um, by all means, put it in the chat around that change. How you feel about change. You might be someone who is really keen to adopt change. You might be someone who, whenever there's change, you're really excited. You might be someone who's kind of in the middle. Yeah, we'll do change. I'm willing to adapt as and when, as long as it's within the right limits and as long as it is effective. Or you might be someone who actually, I'm not really that keen on change. I don't know how you feel about that. But change, even positive change, always involves some form of loss. Effectively, what we're doing is we're going from something that's solid, I'm tapping my desk here, something that we know and that is familiar. We're going to somewhere that is uncertain and uncharted, unknown. It's almost like we're sort of sailing into this fog of uncertainty. But so, for example, let's have even a positive form of change. If you have a new baby, having a new baby usually is considered to be a really positive thing in most contexts. And but I certainly remember from having R2, I definitely lost an awful lot of sleep. I remember losing an awful lot of money. It certainly cost a fair bit. Lost that independence, that ability to go out to the cinema with my wife whenever we wanted, or go out for a meal, and babysitters were now required. But equally, you gain an awful lot as well from that change. So that's one sort of example of positive change where there are losses. I'll give you an example of an organisation that I worked with. They were a scientific organisation, and one of our clients here at Instead, and they one of their sites was moving from an old sort of scientific location to a new one, only about a mile and a half down the road. And I remember talking to the chief exec, or that it was actually the MD of that business as they were moving, and talking about this. I said, "Oh, I get it now," because actually some of his members of staff were worried about the fact that they no longer could get the bus to their business. They had to get a different bus, or they had to walk for a while and then get something else. And there were other ways that they had to get to that business. Not only that, they were used to their environment. It might have been a mess, and it might have been paint peeling off the walls, but it was their mess, and it was their paint peeling off the walls, and it felt like home. And it's that difference between a new building, a brand new physical site that they were moving to, being all shiny and new, feeling like a home as opposed to feeling like a house. I don't know if you've ever had that situation when you've moved house or flat or whatever. You kind of move into somewhere and you kind of have to nest. You have to kind of make it feel like yours, so you can relax in it and you feel comfortable. And again, all of those different things. So as we go through change, we have this major shift that occurs within us, and it happens within organizations, and it happens within our employees' experience. And there are several types of loss. So we have that loss of security. I mentioned people worried for their jobs, or what's happening, or also they lose their competence. So I know how to do my job this way, but actually you're asking me to do it in a different way, which I haven't yet learned. So I'm going to feel like I can't do my job. So it's important to remember that. So we have to help support people through that competence.
Alistair, sorry, can
Yeah,
I interrupt you there?
yeah,
Zainab Patel's got a question, so
yeah,
if
yeah,
the
yeah,
Zoom administrator could unmute Zainab.
yeah. Great. Yeah, thank you. Do feel free to ask it if you've been unmuted. Or alternatively, if someone could read out the question that Zaina's got. Yeah, maybe if are
Maybe
we
you
able
can
to,
move on.
yeah, we able to read out?
Sorry, that was actually by accident. I do apologize.
Okay, no,
No, no problem, Zainab.
Thank you, though.
yeah, no problem, no problem. So yeah, as we so we've got that competent, obviously relationships, moving into a new building, or just even moving around an office means you often sit next to different people, and there are different people that come in to that dynamic, and obviously when there's a restructure, we're worried about, well, who am I going to work with, who am I not going to work with? I hope I'm not going to be with them because I remember what they're like, or actually I really like these people, and it means I might not be able to spend as much time with them. So again, those relationships, also a sense of direction. People often know what it is that they're doing and where they're heading. So when things do change, then that uncertainty can come in. And then lastly, that territory, as I mentioned, you've got a space, and yeah, it might be a bit of a mess, or it might be a little bit old, or a bit dilapidated, paint peeling on the walls. But it's my space, and it's my mess. Even though we've got that opportunity to go to somewhere new. So obviously, as we go through this journey, it's important to sort of remember that people do have all sorts of feelings about that change, and navigating that loss is a really key thing that people do. So I can see that there's lots of comments in the chat of things that people have said about how they feel through change, and everything. I don't know if there are any things just to sort of pick up on there, Kartik, just before we move on to the next bit. Or Rashita, was there anything particularly?
No,
Yep.
just people commenting. No questions as yet.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Great. Okay. So there was someone called Kübler-Ross, and they did this work around the change, about change. And what they realized was that when people experience grief, it's actually very similar to the process that people go through when they experience change. again, grief is when we lose someone dear to us, or someone significant to us. And in the same way, although obviously on a very different scale, change, we experience this loss and we experience this grief. And people go through this curve, which is very similar to the curve that we go through, certainly in Western culture, when it comes to losing a person or an important person in our life. So we have this shock that people go through. First of all, that surprise. I remember when my own mother passed away, it was, oh gosh, I like got the phone call sort of early in the morning, and wow, I knew she was ill, but actually you still don't expect it at that time. And then the denial. I remember trying to call her in the evenings, like or thinking, oh, it's time. You know, I used to always call her in the evenings, and sort of think, oh no, don't need to call this. And then there's frustration. Oh, if only if only I'd been there a bit more. She died sort of during COVID. It wasn't because of COVID, but so there was these other frustrations and maybe anger as well, or maybe someone could have done something differently, and if only we could have spent a bit more time with her. And then we have that lower mood, that depression or that lower morale. And we're not talking clinical depression here, but we are talking a lower morale or a lower motivation. But then as people begin to assess and begin to find out and think about what it means to operate in that new version of operating in the world, then we begin to dip our toe in the water of what these new beginnings look like. So we begin to experiment going forward, and that's the same as sort of coming to terms with that grief, and in the same way experiencing that loss and saying, okay, well, let's see what this new change looks like. And then we make that conscious decision. Okay, I'm going to run with this. Okay, I might not be good at it yet. I'm going to learn, but I'm going to move forward. And then eventually we get to that integration. We lead our life going forward. It will always be different because of what's happened in the past, but we've learned from that and we've been able to apply that. And now we've got this new way of working. So that emotional journey that change takes us on is really important. And that's what's important for us as leaders when we're helping to lead people through change, is to acknowledge that, recognize that, and also work with it as well. So former YouTube CEO Susan, I think it's Wojcik, once said this: being part of successful here is being comfortable with not knowing what's going to happen. It's that fog of uncertainty, remember, that I said, as we go across a bridge, we move from one side of the bridge to the other. We don't necessarily know what's on the other side. But actually being comfortable with uncertainty doesn't come naturally. It does take leadership, and actually leaders who are able to navigate and be adaptable with change are often able to thrive more and help their teams more as well. So going across that foggy bridge is an important sort of skill of doing that. And an interesting one person who developed a model of change around that is also called Bridge. So it's kind of a bit of a little bit corny, but he has this transition model. So Bridges' theory of transition, he basically says there are three elements. And if you look, this is actually that curve that we've just looked at a moment ago, the grief curve, but in a little bit more simplified form. We've got a curve there that moves forward, and then if we come here, we've got the ending. So in order for change to start, something old must end. So we talk about that first phase as being the ending, and then we move into that neutral zone or the transition zone, where there's a lot of uncertainty and unsure, until eventually we get to the other side of the bridge and there's that new beginning. So let's just look at that in again a lot more simplified as we go through this. We call this Bridges' theory of transition. And there's a number of behaviors that we observe. One thing that's important for us as a leader is to know where people are, because actually where they are will depend on how we then lead them according to where they are. And we'll talk about why people will be all in different places in a moment. But just have a look at these different behaviors that you might see. Someone who's in the ending zone, who isn't quite ready yet for the change, they might be argumentative or moaning. They might sort of try and just say, well, if I keep my head down, everything will just stay the same, or I'll just ignore it and it'll go away. Or people move into that middle zone, into the transition zone. So they might carry on as business as usual, and they might be quite busy, but they might not be very productive. But actually they might not know what's required of them. So in that transition zone, but eventually, hopefully people will begin to move towards those new beginnings, and they'll be at that point of dipping their toe in the water, and there might be new energy that comes as a result of that, which is obviously another word for that is hope, vision, as they move forward. There might be some chaos, but it's kind of positive. It's not really necessarily fully directed, but it begins to work that way. And it might be quite stressful, but hopefully a bit less than it was before, until eventually we're able to move into that new beginning where there's increased output, there's a lot more clarity around what needs to be done, and there's that cooperation and coordination. So as we think of these three different phases, I like to think of them a bit like the waves of a marathon. When I don't know if you've ever watched a mass marathon, I've taken part in a few, and then actually like broken my back as a result of that. And it's not broken, but it doesn't work anymore, so I have to cycle now instead. But when you're in a marathon, you see the elite people go fast, the Mo Farahs and the Paula Radcliffes. They get by in about 2 hours. Amazing. Then there's that middle majority, which I was definitely a part of, the ones that had trained and worked hard, but they're never going to win a gold medal in the Olympics, but actually who've worked really hard and are really pleased when they finished it. And then we've got those people at the end who finish, and even though they might take a long while and they might have walked a lot of the way, they've still earned the same medal that the guys and the women at the front have just earned as well. So it's important for organisers to stay there to the end of the marathon and make sure that those people who finish in about 6 hours or 7 hours get a medal, not just give it away to the people between 3.5 and 5 hours, because they've done all of that work too. And I think there's a cut-off limit on London, isn't there? It's either 6 or 8 hours or something like that. But whatever it is, they do that and make sure that everyone gets a medal who's earned one. And it's a bit like this. This is the kind of the distribution of people that you'll get. As we go through time, you'll find that the majority of people are in that ending zone. And some people might be keen and move to the neutral zone, or even straight into that new beginning because they're really keen and they want to get on. But actually, as we move through that process and as time progresses, you'll find that there are fewer and fewer people in that ending zone, more people in that neutral zone, and eventually that new beginning zone begins to populate until eventually the majority of people are there. There's only a few people left in the neutral zone, and there's a few people left in that kind of tail end. And recognizing that is the case. That's going to be the case in your team. There's going to be some people who are really keen, other people who will take some time, and other people who might take even longer. And it's about how we work with all of those people differently. So the question is, what can you do to help your colleagues and yourselves through these current changes? So you can be a change agent. You can help to support and help others, people in your organization, to really thrive as a result of that. So one of the key things is, how can you adapt the way that you support your team at different stages of that marathon? Do feel free to put that in the chat if there are any things that you might do differently according to that ending or that transition, or that new beginning, or certainly on the start of the curve of the new beginning, because there are different ways that we can do that and that support people. I don't know if there's anything coming into the chat at the minute that would be helpful to share. Do let me know, Kartik or Ishita, if there's anything to share.
Yep, sure will do.
Yeah. So these are some of the things that I think that we can do when people are in that ending zone. Is we kind of need to let them know that change is going to happen. Actually, we can no longer stay here because actually the old version of the world doesn't exist anymore. So we need to move forward. And actually, if you stay here, then it's some people call it a bit like staying on a burning bridge. You wouldn't want to stay there because it's not safe and it doesn't exist anymore. And the next thing that we've done is move towards that transition zone. And it's about listening to people, understanding, reminding people of where they're going, and doing that really key as we help to move people forward. And then in that new beginning areas, particularly as people are dipping their toe in the water, we want to maybe celebrate and reward good behavior of people sort of trying to do things, rather than necessarily competence. Because remember, as I said, people might not yet have learned how to do their job in the new way really, really well. But it's really important when people are trying that we don't say, oh, well, that's not good enough, is it? So again, it's about supporting people and helping encourage them until eventually we get to that point where we're in that new beginning. And then we can think about long-term goals and team growth and everything moving forward from that. So as a change agent, you don't necessarily have to determine sort of what you do, other than to support each person in each zone and help support them to move from one area to the next, from one zone to the next, and help move them forward. Because ultimately, if people progress through that change process, then you're helping them to grow and you're helping them to move through that process. Let me give you an example of that. Again, going back to a marathon, I'm in a cycling club in Manchester here called Chorlton Velo, which is the sister club of Chorlton Runners. You may remember this. This is back 2018. It hit the news, the national news. There was a runner called David Wyeth from Chorlton Runners in Manchester, and he was really suffering. He couldn't get across the line. Something called a Foster collapse, where he was only a few hundred meters from the end line of the London Marathon. All his muscles shut down. And then someone called Matthew Rees from Swansea Harriers stopped running, gave up his time for a PB or for a personal best, which is really important when you're a runner. And these are people that are kind of finishing in about 3.5 hours. They're really good runners, certainly a lot better than me. And he's helped to stop him cross the line, earning both the men that kind of media attention. So ultimately, we can be a change agent. It might mean that we make a slight sacrifice, but actually by supporting others and helping them thrive, it means that everyone can get across the line rather than some people missing out. So one of the things that Bridges says, he has these 4 Ps and 2 Cs that support positive change. And I'd like to go through them because I think these are really helpful. These help to support people and help them to thrive as they go through change. So first of all, he says, people need a purpose. In order to know what the change is about, they need to know why the change is happening. So first of all, purpose, really key. The next thing is people want a picture of the future. If they're going to go through that fog of uncertainty, then actually we need to paint a picture. I often call vision a more appealing version of the future. Yeah, and that's what that picture is. It's if people can't visualize it, for some people they'll really struggle to move towards it. So they want to know where it is they're going. And then in order to get there, some people like to know that you've got a plan. Now you don't want it completely nailed down and totally in detail. If it's important that these people are involved in actually helping you get there, because actually the next thing is you want them to be able to play a part and to have a role in helping to shape that, so it looks like them, it's got their handprint and their fingerprints on it. So those 4 Ps and 2 Cs, those are the 4 Ps that of the purpose, the picture, the plan, and the part. We need to make sure whenever we communicate a change, we communicate those 4 things, because that is fundamentally key in helping people to move forward and to know where they're going with that change. But then we also need the 2 Cs. The Ps are the strategic bit. The 2 Cs, they're care and compassion. And again, they're so key because change is all about an emotional journey. And if we're going to be a human-centered change leader, then we need to have bags and bags of empathy, care, and compassion. And by doing that and understanding what's going on for people, then we're able to make a big difference. And there's a bonus one here. Remember, communication, because change creates a vacuum, and into that vacuum people put their own anxieties, fears, and concerns. So that communication can be really key. So just have a think about this then. Your change behaviors, what are you currently doing? And what do you need to do if you're navigating change at the moment? What do you need to do to ensure that you've got those 4 Ps and 2 Cs successfully communicated to your team or within your organization or with the people that you're working with? So there might be some situations you're currently navigating, and you might think, is it going well? Oh, it might be because we've got these 4 Ps and 2 Cs, isn't it? Obviously, it might be the first time you've heard them, but you're actually already working to them. Or it might be that it's not going so well, and in which case, are any of those missing? Is there any thing that's not happening? So what are there any things that you're currently in the process of doing, and anything that is sort of some good practice? So again, do feel free to put that in the chat. If there's anything that is helpful, then Kartik and Ashita, if you just let me know, we can just draw attention to that. Then that would be really helpful. I'll just give you just a moment just to think about that, and I'm just going to quickly have a quick drink. Great. I can see that there's quite a lot of chat in the just in the chat. There's some like 50 comments that I've had. So yeah, thank you very much for all of you that are engaging in that. We're going to have a poll in a minute, but yeah, that's great. That sort of Penny's just saying sort of involving taking team colleagues on that journey and listening to them. Yeah, listening is so key, isn't it? That process of active listening and really not just token listening, but really hearing what's being said. And we've only really heard what's being said if we then take action off the back of it, haven't we? So otherwise, it's just that's just like it just proves we can hear. So listening is a real thing about the process of an active listening is about the process of taking that on board and doing something with it. So I'm going to get you to do another vote in a moment, but just before I do, there is there's something called the 3 personas of change. And interestingly, people like me, we like to have our 2x2 grids. So it wouldn't be a webinar if we didn't do a 2x2 grid at some point. So first of all, people's reaction to change, and we talked about that, people negativity or the way that people respond, and obviously that emotional journey that people go on, and then people's concern and degree of personal influence on change. So here you can see if someone has a high concern for themselves and others, they're at the top, or if they avoid that, then they're at the bottom. And if they have a negative reaction to change, then they might be that passive resistor. But if they have a positive reaction to change, they'll be a passive acceptor. However, someone who has a negative reaction to change and a high concern for self-worth, those are the really vocal people. You will hear a lot about those, and they might be those resistors. They might be your stick in the muds, as it were, or the people that you've got to work with the most. And it's important that you don't ignore them, but at the same time, they won't be the people that are leading that change. They might be some of those people that are perhaps potentially holding up. So it's really important to hear them and hear what they're saying. So yeah, when it comes to change, those people who are more passive and those people who don't have necessarily their own autonomy or don't push things forward, they might be in that victim mentality, which obviously is unhelpful. We want to try and help support people. We don't want people to feel like victims. At the top there are the survivors. They will sort of fight for what they believe and they'll be vocal within that. But actually what we really want to do as well is to have those change agents, those navigators. They're the people that are really going to drive our change forward, and they're incredibly helpful. So yeah, moving from those survivors to navigators and helping to enable those, that's what makes a really good change agent and a navigator. So our poll is, from your experience and also in your world, what are the behaviors that are most important to you in the change agents and navigators? And we've got 5 there. Ashita, if you could launch the poll, please. We've got visionary, we've got empathetic, we've got adaptable, we've got trusted, and we've got empowering. Which ones of those are the most effective in your experience, certainly when it comes to when you've been led through change or in another situation? So yeah, are you able to launch that poll, please, Ashita? Has it gone up there? How are we doing?
Yeah, just a second.
No
Screen
problem.
Start and
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Do
here
feel
we go.
yeah,
Here we go.
that's great. Excellent. And just while this poll's going on, I've just seen
Fine. Thanks.
yeah, thanks, Kartik. You've just been responding to Elvis there. Yeah, those active resistors, yeah, they do make great change champions as well. When we get them on board, when we kind of turn it around, and if we go through those 4 Ps as well, so they really understand why it needs to happen, and we're helping to present that vision, and also we've been inviting them to help shape that and make that role. They can make a huge difference within that as well. So excellent. So we just got this poll running now. We just run it for a little bit more, if that's okay. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to click on it, just so we can get into that last little bit. So yeah, when you think that the majority of people who are on have voted their issue, to then do feel free to stop it and just share the results.
Sure. And just giving a couple of seconds, and here
Yeah.
I'm on the poll.
Great. Thank you.
You will see the results.
Excellent. Excellent. So so interesting. Yeah, so that one of the key things then is about adaptable, but yeah, the top one that's come out here, trusted. One of the pieces of work that I've been looking at a lot recently, I've been talking about it pretty much every leadership course I do. At some point, we end up talking about it, and that's psychological safety, which comes from Amy C. Edmondson. And she talks about the fact that if we don't trust each other in the workplace, then we will never get the best out of each other, and we'll never get the best out of our organization. And actually fostering that relationship of trust is so key within an organization, and an organization that has trust will be able to navigate change so much easier, because they'll be able to have, shall we say, frank discussions that are important, but in a fair way, because people will know that they're not going to get the sack because they raised something. But equally, you'll get to the best version of that change going forward. So if people trust each other, then you're winning already. So that happens not just by accident. It happens because you're working towards that the whole time in your workplace. And obviously that's a cultural thing that doesn't just, you don't just need during a time of change, you need it all the time as well. But yeah, so trust, adaptability, yeah, really key. One of those areas that we talk about in emotional intelligence, and the ability to be flexible and adaptable, again, is really key, makes a really good leader. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And empowering, again, that part, so that role that people play is really key as well within that Bridges model. So we've not got a lot left today. I've just got a couple more things just to say before we open up that Q&A. And this, I love this quote: change done to people creates resistance, but change done with people, it builds trust, energy, and momentum as well. That it's such a key thing that when we invite people to join us on that journey and we co-create what the future looks like through trust, then that's where change is really positive. It makes forward, and that's where you're going to really see that positive difference going forward. So it then comes down to our mindset. So how do we view people? Do we view one of those victims, or do we view that person, that vocal survivor who's being anti? Do we view that person as difficult? So the person's difficult, so therefore I'm going to anticipate trouble, which means I might be a bit, I will be worried about it. I might be a bit aggressive with my responses. I might fear things. I might expect some trouble. I'm going to stamp it out at the first hint as soon as someone sort of raises their voice. I'm going to react. I'm going to be defensive and offended, shout, maybe yell, refuse to talk, all of those things. Am I going to try and control people, to coerce them or manipulate them or threaten or make demands? And these are all of the things that come out when our approach through change is about viewing people as difficult. And I liken this, if you'll excuse the football analogy, I'm originally from Brighton and I'm a Brighton fan, but I liken this, although I've lived in Manchester for 20 odd years, we can't really live in Manchester without knowing something about football. But rather than thinking about attacking the ball, people are attacking the person. And if we attack the person, then we're going to get sent off. We're going to get a red card. And we've had several players who've been really good at getting red cards, certainly all the time. I've been following my team, Brighton. But actually, when we attack the ball, when we tackle the ball, then we're able to make a difference. So what we do is we want to tackle the ball, not the player. So do we think about the person being difficult? No. What we do is we think about the situation being difficult. And if the situation is difficult, then what I'm going to do, well, I've got to share responsibility with it. It is a difficult situation. I'm going to need all my colleagues working at their best. And as a result of that, we're going to take responsibility for it. We're going to diffuse a difficult situation. We're going to stay cool, be helpful. We're going to help each other work together and collaboratively build that trust and offer alternatives, try and diagnose the problems, get to the best version of that change going forward, and listen to what people say, explain carefully, show that I'm here to help. We're all trying to get to that purpose. There's a reason why it's got to happen, and that's the picture. We can see why it's going to happen. In other words, we're basically acting professionally, but we're also acting assertively as well. We're saying this is why we're going in the direction that we're going, and really helping to take people with them. So if you're interested in change and you want a book that's really quite quick and easy to read, there's a book which is really old now, but it's just called Who Moved My Cheese by Dr. Spencer Johnson. It's kind of the sort of thing you could read in a lunch hour. I would say about an hour. It's relatively quick, and it's kind of one of those little thought experiments, a bit like a parable or a story. So it's a book that if you have a chance to read, I can recommend it. But my question and my challenge to you, just as we begin to come into land and think about what we're going to be doing, and then open this up for a full question and answer, is this might have been an interesting lunchtime for you. And that's great. And it might be that you'll go back to your desk and go back to working with whatever you're doing. Or might be going home if you're really lucky. But actually, this is a so what question. So what are you going to do differently as a result of today's webinar? Are you going to carry on doing the same thing? Or are you going to try and do something different as a result of today's webinar? Are you going to try and put some of those into practice? It might be the 4 Ps, 2 Cs. It might be thinking about how we listen to people. It might be attacking the ball, not the player. What are you going to do differently as a result of today? It might be something you're going to stop. It might be something you're going to start. It might be something you're going to keep doing, but actually with a slight tweak because you're already doing a good job, but actually you've just been able to enhance it a little bit. So the next thing, when you thought about what you're going to continue doing as a result of today, is what resources will you need? is there any training that you need, or is there anyone that you want to talk to, or do you need some more time, or actually do you need it might be some software or some kind of collaboration, or actually the resources might just be some pizza to get your team together and have a chat over it. So what are the resources that you're going to need? And then finally, because unless we set a time on things, they often don't happen, when are you going to action it? So when you're going to put it into practice? Is it on Monday? Is it going to be next Wednesday? Or is it going to be your next team meeting? Or is it going to be at the end of the month when you have a one-to-one with someone? When is it going to be? And try and set that up. And I just encourage everyone, just think about one action that you're taking away. And if you like, you can drop that in the chat. We'd love to see what actions you're going to take as a result of today's webinar. It's always encouraging for me as a trainer to get a bit of that feedback, and also to see what's been helpful and what hasn't been helpful. I've seen in some of the chat, some of the encouragement around the 4 Ps, 2 Cs, and those sorts of things as well. So yeah, is there anything that you're taking away? And more importantly, not just something that you're going to take away as an idea, but what are you going to do in practice as a result of that? So I'll just leave that up there just for a moment, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague because we're going to invite you to something else that we're running soon as InStep, and I think Kartik is going to explain that. Shall I just pop that up there? And I'm going to, in fact, shall I step out the way, because if you're going to talk about this, Kartik,
you can stay where you are, Alistair. That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Alistair.
Pleasure.
Thank you to everyone for joining us today and for getting involved. So just to summarize, what we've explored here is that successful business change isn't about systems or structures alone. It's about people. Change done to people creates resistance, but change done with people builds trust, which was obviously the clear winner in the last poll, momentum and long-term value. So as you reflect on today's session, I encourage you to think about how you can take these insights back into your teams, into your departments. What part will you play in turning change from a disruption into an opportunity? Think about the Rubicons that you're crossing. What kind of change leader do you want to be? And how will you support others through their journey? So really, there's a lot to think about. So in terms of what happens next, after the webinar, your InStep client manager will make contact with you just in case you've got any follow-up questions. On Monday, we will send you a link to the webinar recording and a copy of the presentation deck. And because many of you have already asked for a deep dive into our Business Change Excellence Apprenticeship, I'm very pleased to announce that we have scheduled an insight session on Tuesday, 7th October. It's an open invitation for anyone who wishes to learn more about the program. And actually, what I'll do, I'll hand over to my colleague Carl, who will be running the insight session, and he'll give you a very quick 20-second overview. Carl, are you there?
I am, yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Kartik. So as you mentioned, yeah, we've got a business change excellence program that really picks up and explores a lot of the topics that Alistair spoke about today. So especially around driving lasting, sustainable business change. And quite rightly, as you said, we've got an information session on the 7th of October at 12 o'clock. And what we'll be doing on that session is taking a deep dive into the program, the learner journey, the topics, and potential next steps for anyone that might want to apply. I'll be joined on that session by our business change delivery lead, so it'll be myself and our colleague that will be delivering that. And ultimately, it's designed for anybody that's leading or driving change initiatives. That we talked about change agents, but it might be someone that's wanting to step up as an AI or a digital champion, or simply looking at ways to improve processes or customer outcomes. So we find it's quite a varied program in terms of a lot of people from a variety of different departments do join. So kind of the ask is really, if you are thinking about your own development, or you might have colleagues in your team, in your business, in your organization that are maybe in the middle of a transformation or about to start one, then come and join, find out a bit more around some of the skills and the impact it can make. And we've seen some really excellent individual impact centered around time savings, cost savings, making things better, or business improvement. I think there's a link going into the chat, so hopefully that will be in there now. So if you do want to sign up, come along, sign up for that session. We'll also share the link in the follow-up as well. That was slightly longer than 20 seconds, Kartik, but hopefully
no problem.
All good.
No, a lot of information there. Thank you. So yeah, look, we've got 7 minutes left. Let's open up the floor to a Q&A session.
Right. I'll just stop sharing my screen so then you
Yeah,
can
I think so.
see all of us. So
Yeah.
there we go.
Great. Thank you, Alistair. That was excellent.
Yeah, if there are any questions, if you've got a question, if you put it in the chat, then we can respond to that. And likewise, we can either unmute you, you can talk it through, or if you'd rather not do that because you're a bit shy, that's fine. Then we can just respond to that there from there. So do feel free to ask any questions. And thank you also, just while Carl was talking, I was listening to Carl, but I was also just having a quick look at the webinar chat. Thank you very much for all the positive feedback as well about the session. I'm glad you found it interesting, insightful, and useful within that as well. So Alice has got a question.
Yes.
Do we want to unmute Alice and you can ask it?
Or you could just I think she's posted it in the chat.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep. So so the question that Alice has put is, without any direct reports, how can we best support and advocate changes and advocate for changes in our company? Is it by being that active acceptor? So yeah, it is a key thing. Quite often I work with people and they'll be on a leadership and management course, and actually they don't have anyone currently that they line manage, but actually you'd be amazed the amount of influence that you have. So John C. Maxwell, who's a leadership guru, as it were, or written a lot of the first books that I read on leadership. He said this: the only way you know you're a leader is if you look back and there are people following. And often you might not have a direct report, but you're a leader because you have influence across your company, across your organization, or within your team. You might be someone who's asking and requesting regularly for data to come in. And I think, yeah, being that active acceptor, how you move forward, you can be one of those people, just like who helped that David Wyeth across the finish line of the marathon. You can be that person who can sort of notice that someone's struggling and really help them, particularly if you kind of think one of those 4 Ps are missing. You could maybe ask someone as well, yeah, well, what is that purpose? Or hopefully no one would ever launch a change without knowing why they're doing it, but actually just asking those questions, and again, you can help to support your team and people that you know as a result of that. But yeah, thanks, Alice.
Zainab's asked a question, Alistair.
Yep, great. Okay, so yeah, Zainab, so how do you handle individuals that are very passive? They don't have a lot to say and struggle to share their thoughts and opinions despite a safe space being provided? Yes, that's a really good question. In some ways, I'd like to get to know that person well. There are some people like me, we're kind of loudmouth and talk a lot. Yeah, not necessarily always the best person to have to answer that type of question. But I think it's really important to remember that some people are those quieter types. They like to, they would rather be in the background, but actually when they do speak, what they speak is really, really valuable. And I think it's important to really listen to them and to give them that opportunity. One thing I find that's helpful with people maybe who are a little bit more, I don't know if they are introverted, the person that you're talking about, but if someone were introverted, is about giving them time to think about what they're going to ask. So sometimes someone like myself, I'm quite willing to just sort of speak off the cuff and sort of shoot from the hip, as it were. But actually give someone, say, oh, would you like to talk about that? And we can meet tomorrow if you like, and give them a chance just to think about it, process it, to be able, they can make some notes and write it down, and they know that they're going to be having a conversation about that. So it's a way of giving them the chance to make that up. If they're passive, then sometimes it's about, well, how can I get this person engaged in that? So it might be that they're quiet. It might just be that they may be a bit apathetic or passive. Now, but it's important to not confuse the two. It might be that they're passive, but they're not apathetic. It's still important to them. So if they are passive within that, it's maybe just trying to find out what's important to them and finding out what areas they are interested in. And interestingly, when we do begin to talk to people about the things that motivate them and find out their motivations, that's when we can really begin to create some kind of dialogue. But yeah, I don't profess to be the expert of all. I often used to joke with my PhD, an expert is basically an X is a has been and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So I try not to be an expert on too many things because you can set yourself up for a failure. But if that's helpful, just from my perspective, but I'm sure there's a number of other things that might be helpful. Thank you. I've just seen there's another comment there as well, but I can't see a question. But are there any other questions? Again, thank you for your feedback, everyone who's put feedback in there.
So just linking on to Zainab's question, actually,
Yeah.
Theodora's question, it's in the chat, Alistair. Again, it's about passive individuals.
Okay, I may have just okay, yeah. So very passive individuals. I have regular one-to-ones often and give them opportunity and time to engage. Yeah, I found it useful, but please let me know if you have any other suggestions. Yeah, do you know what? I think that's one of the key things that we can do, because someone, if they are more passive and that might be because they're introverted or not. But actually just giving people that regularity, they know as a regular cadence, there's a regular opportunity for them to ask questions, or a regular opportunity for them to check in with you. Then then when they need to speak up, they know it's there. And it's important that we don't kind of reschedule those one-to-ones, that we prioritize them. Often, we get a one-to-one and something quote more important comes along, and we end up pushing them to the side as a result of that. And obviously how you feel about that, you can feel quite devalued. But I think, yeah, having those one-to-ones, I think is really good. But yeah, I think for me, the key thing is finding out really what makes them tick, what are they excited about, and what motivates them, and thinking about their own motivations, because ultimately that's where we can begin to help them. There's one organisation that we work with, I won't say which one it is, but they on the first day of work, they get everyone to say a member of their family who they want to make proud every day, and they print out a picture, put it in a frame, and it's on their desk. Every day they're on that call centre, and that is they kind of want to make that person proud, and that's again, that's a way of kind of moving from that passivity to being a bit more proactive and assertive. Kartik.
I think that's about the last question.
Yeah,
actually.
I see it's 1 o'clock now. I don't want to overrun, because I recognise people need to go back to work.
There is one more question from Dashita. So so it says here, would you have any suggestions for celebrating rewarding change in the workplace where there's been transformation?
Yeah, well, I think that the key thing is to celebrate that change. One of the key things is that we talk about in some other change models is about celebrating those early wins. So when you see the first fruits of that, so whether it's low-hanging fruit or something that can be easily done without a lot of effort, but it can be high impact, is actually really making the most of that, because one, that helps those people who are still in the ending zone, who haven't even moved into the transition zone. It helps them to start moving forward, but equally it helps to reward those people who are already beginning to move forward and make that difference. So yeah, I would really encourage that. But I think it depends culturally a lot for you in your business as to what would be appropriate. An appropriate way to celebrate. What I might say might not work in your business or your organization, but I think valuing people and thanking them, and more than that token situation, but actually when people go beyond when people do go beyond they do more than they need to. It's just sort of really acknowledging that. I think that's really key too. But yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I do appreciate we've come to an end, and I recognise people probably need to get back to work, or you might, if you're lucky, you're gonna you've got the afternoon off. But, I'll be working for the rest of the afternoon. but yeah, thanks ever so much for having us, and thank you, Kartik, as well, for hosting. So
thank you, Alistair, and thank you to everybody. Have a nice afternoon and a good weekend.
Thank you, Kartik.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Alistair.
Excellent. Bye. My pleasure. I'll just quickly share this screen here. There we go. Final credits if you want to get hold of us.
I think